So, the legendary gunslinger chose to die for a priest?
Any last words?
There are men who build towns with wood and nails. And there are men who build towns with something that doesn't have a name, but that everyone feels when it's there and when it's gone. Father Elias Vega had been in Cutter's Bend, Oklahoma for 11 years. He had arrived on a Tuesday in March with a single trunk, a Bible with a cracked spine, and the specific kind of patience that only men who have chosen to serve something larger than themselves seem to carry. He hadn't built a church right away. He had spent the first 6 months learning names. Every name in that town. The miners, the widows, the children who ran barefoot in the dust, the men who drank too much, and the women who held everything together while they did. The ones who believed and the ones who didn't. Because Father Elias had understood from the beginning that faith isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. By the time he built the church, Cutter's Bend already trusted him. Not because he preached, because when the fever came in the winter of 1879 and took 3 children in 1 week, Father Elias was the one who sat with the families through the night. Not praying out loud, just sitting. Being present in the way that presence matters more than words. When the Harlow family lost everything in the flood of 1882, it was Father Elias who organized the collection. Quietly, without announcement. The money appeared on the Harlow doorstep in a cloth bag with no note, because he had understood that dignity sometimes means not knowing where the help came from. He taught reading on Wednesday afternoons to anyone who wanted to learn. Children mostly, but also 3 adults who had carried the shame of illiteracy for decades and who found in that small room behind the church a place where the shame didn't have to exist anymore. Cutter's Bend wasn't a perfect town. No town in Oklahoma in 1886 was perfect, but it was a town that believed it was worth something. And a large part of that belief had been built, quietly and without fanfare, by one man with a cracked Bible and 11 years of showing up. That was the man they took. On a Thursday morning, with the sun barely up, while Father Elias was sweeping the steps of the church the way he did every morning, slowly, methodically, the way he did everything, 4 men rode into Cutter's Bend and took him. Not violently, not with chaos, with the specific efficiency of men who have done this before and who know that speed matters more than drama. By the time anyone in the town understood what had happened, the dust from 4 horses was already settling on the North Road. And on the church steps, the broom Father Elias had been holding lay in the dirt, still moving slightly in the morning wind. That image, the broom, the empty steps, the dust settling where a good man had stood moments before, was the image that Cutter's Bend would carry for the rest of its life. But the story that followed was the one people told, because before the dust had fully settled, someone had already ridden for Cole Harlan. Before we go further, Father Elias Vega spent 11 years building something in Cutter's Bend that no one could put a price on. The men who took him knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't just taking a hostage, they were taking the soul of a town. And they were betting that Cole Harlan would come for it. They were right. They were just wrong about what that meant. If this story is already pulling you in, subscribe now. And tell me in the comments, would you have surrendered? Because Cole Harlan did, or so it seemed. His name was Royce Callum, 38 years old, Missouri born. The kind of face that people forget on purpose. Not ugly, not distinctive, just the specific blankness of someone who has spent years making himself easy to overlook. Cole Harlan had met him 4 years ago in a town called Milo, Nebraska. Royce had been running a scheme there. Not a violent one. Not yet. He was taking money from homesteaders in exchange for land titles that didn't exist, disappearing before they understood what had happened, reappearing in the next town with a new name and the same story. Cole had found him in the 3rd town. He had a choice that day. Turn him over to the law, which in Milo in 1882 meant a marshal who was 3 days' ride away and a jail that held people about as well as a screen door holds wind. Or make an example. Cole had done neither. He had taken Royce's money, every dollar, given it back to the families, told Royce to ride east and not stop until he hit something large enough to disappear into permanently. And then he had let him go. Not from softness, from calculation. Cole had looked at Royce Callum that day and seen a man who was dangerous in small ways. A thief, a liar, a coward with good instincts for survival. But not the kind of dangerous that required a permanent solution. He had been wrong. What Cole hadn't seen, what he couldn't have seen, was what happens to certain men when they are humiliated without consequence, when they are stripped of everything and released like something too small to bother with. Some men learn. Royce Callum had spent 4 years learning something different. He had learned that Cole Harlan's mercy was the most useful weapon anyone had ever handed him. Because Cole Harlan was a legend, and legends, Royce had figured out, are built on fear. And fear works until someone stands up to it. And if you could make a legend kneel, if you could drag Cole Harlan into a town in front of witnesses and put a gun to his head and pull the trigger, what you killed wasn't just a man. It was the idea of the man. Royce had spent 4 years building toward that moment. 3 men found and paid and told what they were doing and why. A town selected carefully, small enough to control, significant enough to matter. A hostage chosen with the specific understanding that Cole Harlan would come for a man of God before he'd come for almost anyone else. Father Elias Vega hadn't been chosen by accident. Royce had done his research. He knew about Cole, about what he responded to, about the specific kind of injustice that made Cole Harlan ride toward something instead of away. An innocent man, a good man, a man who had spent his life serving others. That was the bait, and Cole Harlan rode straight for it. Because Royce Callum had understood one thing correctly: Cole would come. What Royce had failed to understand was the difference between coming and arriving unprepared. The rider who found Cole reached him at a water stop 12 miles south of Cutter's Bend. A boy, maybe 17, who had pushed his horse harder than was wise, and who delivered the message in 3 sentences. "Father Elias, taken. They want Cole Harlan." Cole listened. Didn't ask many questions. Asked 2. "How many men?" "4 that we saw." "Where are they holding him?" "The old Garrett Mill, north end of town, abandoned 3 years." Cole thanked the boy, told him to rest his horse. Then he rode north, but not directly to Cutter's Bend. He rode west first, 2 miles, then north, then east along the ridge that ran above the town at a distance of half a mile, where the cottonwood trees were thick enough to hide a man and a horse from anyone watching the road below. He tied Shadow there, not with the standard knot, with the slip knot, the one that the horse had learned, over years, to hold until a specific whistle reached him. Low, 2 notes, the kind of sound that didn't carry like a shout, but that Shadow had been trained to hear through wind and distance and the noise of other horses. Cole looked at the mill from the ridge. He could see 2 men outside, one at the main door, one circling the perimeter with the unhurried patience of someone who doesn't expect trouble from the direction it's coming from. 2 outside, 2 inside probably, one of them with Father Elias. Cole studied the terrain for 20 minutes. Then he did something that a man watching would have found strange. He sat down on a rock, took off his right boot, removed something from the inner lining, small, flat, wrapped in cloth, and worked on his Colt for 4 minutes with the careful attention of a watchmaker. When he put the gun back in the holster, it looked exactly as it always had. It would not fire. Not the first time. Not the second. The cylinder had been adjusted with a pressure point that would cause the hammer to fall a 1/4 inch short of the primer on the first 2 pulls. Enough to produce the click of a misfire, convincing enough to fool anyone who hadn't built the gun themselves. On the 3rd pull, it would fire normally. Cole had no intention of letting it get to the 3rd pull. He stood, put his boot back on, checked the 2nd Colt, the one he wore behind his left hip. smaller, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it, and confirmed it was loaded and functioning correctly. Then he walked down from the ridge toward Cutter's Bend. On foot, hands visible. The specific posture of a man who has decided to make himself easy to find. They saw him coming from 200 yards. The man at the door called inside. The one circling the perimeter moved to intercept. Cole kept walking at the same pace. Not slow enough to seem afraid, not fast enough to seem eager. The pace of someone who has somewhere to be and is going there. The perimeter man stopped 10 feet in front of him. "You Cole Harlan?" "Yes." The man looked at him for a moment, then at the road behind him, then back. "Where's your horse?" "Left it outside of town," Cole said. "Didn't think you'd want me riding in armed and mounted." The man thought about that, nodded slowly, turned. "He's here," he called toward the mill. The door opened. Royce Callum walked out. 4 years had changed him, in ways that were visible and ways that weren't. He was thinner. The blankness in his face had been replaced by something more deliberate. The look of a man who has been rehearsing this moment for a long time and who is now in it. He stopped 10 feet from Cole and looked at him the way a man looks at something he spent years thinking about. "You remember me," Royce said. It wasn't a question. "Milo, Nebraska," Cole said. 4 years ago." Something moved in Royce's expression. He had expected denial, maybe, or recognition without the calm. Not this. The flat acknowledgement of a man who remembers and has decided the memory doesn't change anything. "I thought about you every day for 4 years, Royce said. "I know," Cole said. "You took everything I had. I gave it back to the people you took it from." Royce smiled, not with warmth. "I want you to know something," Royce said, "before this happens. I want you to know that this is what you created. That day in Milo, you made a choice. And this," he gestured at the mill, at the men, at all of it. "This is where that choice ends up." Cole looked at him steadily. "Where's Father Elias?" "Inside, unhurt, for now." Royce tilted his head. "Does that matter to you, that he's unhurt?" "It matters." "Good," Royce said. "Then give me your guns." Cole reached across with his left hand and drew the Colt from the right holster, held it out. Royce took it. Then the second one, from the left hip. Royce took that one too. Handed both to the man beside him without looking away from Cole. "On your knees," Royce said. Cole looked at him for one long moment. Then he went to his knees in the dirt of Cutter's Bend. The man at the door laughed, short and hard. Royce stood over Cole with an expression that was trying to be triumph and was landing somewhere closer to relief. The specific relief of someone who has waited so long for something that actually arriving at it feels unreal. 4 years, Royce said quietly. 4 years I thought about this. Cole said nothing. "You know what I realized?" Royce continued. "I realized that you're not a legend. You're just a man who was faster than the men he faced. And fast doesn't mean anything when you're already in the dirt." Still nothing from Cole. Royce reached down and took the first Colt back from his man, turned it in his hand, looked at it. "I'm going to kill you with your own gun," Royce said, "so that everyone in this town sees it, so that everyone in Oklahoma knows that Cole Harlan died on his knees in the dirt with his own Colt pointed at his head." He raised the gun. The barrel found Cole's temple. The man who had been at the door had come forward now. The perimeter man was watching. All 4 of them were watching, because this was the moment. This was what 4 years of planning had been for. Royce's finger found the trigger. "Last words, stranger," Royce said. Cole looked straight ahead, not at Royce, not at the gun, at some point in the middle distance that only he could see. He didn't speak. He didn't plead. He didn't close his eyes. Royce pulled the trigger. Click. The sound was small and definitive in the morning air of Cutter's Bend. Silence. Nobody moved. Royce looked at the gun. His hand pulled the trigger again. Click. The second man took a step forward. What? And then the whistle. Low. 2 notes. Barely audible. But Shadow heard it. The horse came from the ridge at a full run. Not the controlled canter of a trained animal performing a task. The full, violent, ground-eating run of 500 pounds of muscle that has been waiting and has finally been released. Shadow hit the edge of the mill clearing in 8 seconds and didn't slow down. He ran directly into the horses tied at the rail. Not into them, through them, past them, close enough that the tied horses reacted with the specific animal panic that horses have when something large and fast moves through their space without warning. 2 broke their ties immediately. 1 reared. The 4th spun and pulled the post it was tied to partially out of the ground. 4 men with 4 horses suddenly going in 4 different directions. In the Old West, that's not a distraction. That's a collapse of everything at once. The man who had been closest to Cole turned toward the horses. Instinct, pure and immediate. Horses mean survival in that territory, and the instinct to control them overrides almost everything else in the first second. 1 second. That was all. Cole moved. Not toward Royce. Away from him. A single roll to the left that took him out of the line where the misfired gun was still pointed, onto his feet and behind the partial cover of the mill's corner post, in a movement that was so fast and so low that 2 of the 4 men didn't track it at all. The second Colt, the one Royce had handed to his man, the one that worked, was in the hands of a man who was now managing a panicking horse with one hand and holding a gun with the other. Cole closed the distance in 4 steps, took the gun, turned. Royce had recovered. He was raising the misfiring Colt again. The 3rd pull Cole knew would fire, but he was raising it at empty space because Cole was no longer where Cole had been. Cole was 6 feet to his right. "Put it down, Royce," Cole said. Royce spun. His eyes found Cole, found the gun in Cole's hand, his own gun, the working one, now pointing at Royce's center. The 2 remaining men were visible in Cole's peripheral vision. One was moving his hand toward his holster. "Don't," Cole said without looking at him. Something in the voice stopped the hand. Royce looked at the gun, at Cole, at the gun again. "How?" Royce said. Not a question, just the word standing alone, because it was the only word available. "You spent 4 years studying the legend," Cole said. "You should have spent one of them learning how the gun works." Royce's face moved through several things in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, understanding, then something that wasn't rage. Something colder than rage. The specific devastation of a man who realizes that the thing he has spent years building was never as solid as he believed. "The priest," Cole said. "Where exactly?" "Inside, left room." The man who had been at the door. Not Royce, the other one. Giving up information with the speed of someone recalculating which side of this situation is safer. "You." Cole looked at him. "Go get him. Bring him out. Slowly." The man went. Cole kept his eyes on Royce. "In Milo," Cole said, "I let you go because I thought the damage you could do was small. That was a mistake in judgment." Royce said nothing. "Father Elias spent 11 years building something in this town," Cole continued. His voice hadn't changed. The same flat tone, the same pace. "He taught people to read. He sat with people when they were dying. He fed children who would have gone hungry. He built this town in the way that actually matters, the way that doesn't show up in the deed records but that you feel the moment it's taken away." Royce's jaw tightened. "You used him," Cole said, "as a prop, to get to me." "I used what worked," Royce said. Low, something in his voice that was still trying to be defiant. "I know," Cole said. "That's why I'm not making the same mistake twice." The door opened. Father Elias Vega walked out into the morning light of Cutter's Bend, supported by the arm of the man Cole had sent in. He was unhurt physically. Something in the way he held himself said that the hours inside the mill had cost him something that wasn't visible, but was real. He saw Cole. He stopped, took in the scene. Royce standing with a dead gun at his side. Two men with their hands in view. Shadow standing 20 feet away with his chest heaving from the run. Calm now, watching. Father Elias looked at Cole with the eyes of someone who has spent 11 years reading people, and who is reading this one very carefully. "Are you all right?" Cole asked. "I am," Father Elias said. "Are you?" Cole almost smiled. "I'm fine." The priest walked to the side of the clearing, away from the center. Cole had told him nothing. They had never met before that morning. But Father Elias moved as if he understood instinctively that the space in the middle of that clearing wasn't his space anymore. Some men know when to step aside. Cole looked at the two men who weren't Royce. "You two," he said. "Guns on the ground, then start walking south. Don't stop until you're out of Oklahoma." They looked at each other, then at Royce. Royce said nothing. The guns went on the ground. The two men walked south. Cole watched them go. Then he turned back to Royce Callum. Just the two of them now. And Father Elias at the edge of the clearing. And Shadow behind Cole, breathing steadily, the way he always did after the run. "In Milo," Royce said. His voice had changed. The rehearsed quality was gone. What was left was something raw. "You humiliated me." "I returned stolen money," Cole said. "You made me nothing," Royce said, "in front of people. You looked at me like I wasn't worth the bullet, like I was too small to bother with." "You were," Cole said. "And now?" Cole looked at him, at the 4 years in his face, at the specific wreckage of a man who has organized his entire life around a single act of revenge and who is standing in the aftermath of it with nothing. "Now you used a good man as a tool," Cole said. "An innocent man who spent his life serving others. You took him from his church steps on a Thursday morning while he was sweeping." Royce said nothing. "That changes the calculation," Cole said. "I didn't hurt him," Royce said quickly. "No," Cole said. "You didn't get the chance." Silence. The wind moved through the cottonwood trees at the edge of the clearing. Shadow shifted his weight. Father Elias at the far side stood very still with his hands folded in front of him. Not praying. Watching. "You could have learned something in Milo," Cole said. "Some men do. They lose everything, they rebuild differently. They find that the version of themselves that was running the scheme wasn't the only version available." Royce's jaw was tight. "You chose the other thing," Cole said. 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, the only thing you built was this. "Then finish it," Royce said. His voice had gone flat. The flatness of someone who has decided that dignity in the ending is the only thing left to choose. "One more question," Cole said. "The third man, the one who was circling the perimeter when I came in, he wasn't one of the two I sent south." Royce's eyes shifted, barely, but enough. "He went into town," Cole said, not a question. "When he saw me coming, you sent him somewhere." Silence. "Father," Cole spoke without turning around, "is there anyone in town who would have been a target if this didn't go Royce's way?" Father Elias was quiet for a moment. "The Harlow family," the priest said carefully. "They were the ones who rode for you. Royce's man may have been told." Cole was already moving. "Stay here," he said to Father Elias. He walked to Shadow, mounted in one motion, looked down at Royce Callum for a moment. "Don't move," Cole said. He rode hard into Cutter's Bend. The Harlow house was at the south end of town. Cole found the third man, younger than the others, maybe 25, with the specific look of someone who has been given an order he isn't sure he wants to carry out, standing on the Harlow porch with his hand on the door. He heard Shadow before he saw Cole. He turned. Cole was already off the horse. The man reached for his gun. Cole was faster. Not by much, by the margin that matters. The man's hand stopped 6 inches from the holster. "Step off the porch," Cole said. He stepped off. On the ground, he went down. Cole looked at the door, listened. The sound of a child inside. Small, ordinary, the sound of a morning that hadn't been interrupted. He looked at the man on the ground, young, scared. The expression of someone who has ended up in a situation that felt manageable until the moment it stopped being manageable. "Royce hired you," Cole said. "Yes." "What were you supposed to do here?" A pause. "If things went wrong at the mill, the family that sent for you, I was supposed to..." He stopped. "I know what you were supposed to do," Cole said. "Did you do it?" "No." "Why not?" The young man looked at the door, at the sound of the child inside. "I have a son," he said, 3 years old. Cole looked at him for a moment. "Get up," Cole said. "Give me the gun. Ride west. Don't stop for 2 days." The man stood, handed over the gun, looked at Cole with the expression of someone who doesn't understand why they're still breathing and isn't going to ask. He rode west. Cole stood on the Harlow porch for a moment, listened to the child inside. Then he rode back to the mill. Royce Callum was where Cole had left him. He had considered running. It was visible in the way he was standing when Cole rode back in, the slight adjustment of weight, the positioning of the feet. He had considered it, and he had stayed. Maybe dignity. Maybe the calculation that running from Cole Harlan on foot with no horse and no gun was a different kind of death. Maybe something else. Cole dismounted, walked to him. Father Elias was still at the edge of the clearing, still watching. "The family is safe," Cole said. "Your man didn't do it." Something moved in Royce's face. Not relief exactly. More like the adjustment a man makes when the last piece of the story has been told and there's nothing left to manage. "In Milo," Cole said, "I looked at you and I made a judgment. I decided you were small, that the harm you could do was limited, that mercy was the economical choice." He stood directly in front of Royce now. "I was wrong," Cole said. "Not about what you were, about what you would become when you were given the time and the reason." "So you're going to fix the mistake," Royce said. "I'm going to make a different choice," Cole said. "That's not the same thing." Royce looked at him. The blankness was completely gone now. What was underneath it, what 4 years of obsession had been built on top of, was visible. A man who had been made to feel like nothing, and who had never found another way to feel like something. Cole understood that. He didn't say so. There are things that understanding doesn't change. "Father?" Cole said. Father Elias walked forward, stood beside Cole. The priest looked at Royce Callum with the eyes of a man who has sat with enough human wreckage to know what it looks like, and who doesn't flinch from it. "I don't hate you," Father Elias said to Royce. His voice was quiet and direct, the voice of a man who means exactly what he says. "I want you to know that. Whatever happens here, I don't hate you." Royce looked at the priest. Something crossed his face that was close to confusion, as if mercy, encountered genuinely and without agenda, was a language he had forgotten how to speak. "I know," Royce said. "That's what I knew about you. That's why I chose you." Father Elias nodded slowly. "Because you knew someone would come for me." "Because I knew he would come for you," Royce said. The priest looked at Cole, then back at Royce. "And here we are," Father Elias said. "Here we are," Royce said. Cole raised the gun. "You should have used your own," Cole said. The gun fired once. Royce Callum went down in the dirt of the mill clearing with the specific stillness of something that has reached its end. Not slowly, not dramatically, just gone. The sound of the single shot rolled out across the flat Oklahoma land and faded. Shadow stood still. Father Elias stood still. Cole stood still. Then the priest crossed himself. Not for Cole, for the man in the dirt. Because Father Elias Vega was the kind of man who did that even for the people who had taken him at gunpoint on a Thursday morning. Especially for those people. Because he had understood, in 11 years of sitting with the broken and the lost and the ones nobody else was willing to sit with, that the people most in need of that gesture are always the ones who seem least deserving of it. Cole looked at him. "Are you all right?" he asked again. "Ask me in a few days," Father Elias said. It was honest. Cole respected that. "I'll send the marshal from Ardmore," Cole said. "Tell him what happened here. He'll take care of the rest." The priest nodded. "Will you come back?" Father Elias asked. "To Cutter's Bend." Cole looked at the town, at the rooftops visible above the tree line, at the church spire above all of them. "Probably not," he said. "That's what I thought," the priest said, "but I wanted to ask." Cole put his hat on, walked to Shadow, mounted. The horse stood solid and steady underneath him, breathing normally, completely unbothered by the morning's events in the way that Shadow had always been unbothered. Not from lack of intelligence, but from the specific kind of trust that comes from long partnership. Cole looked down at Father Elias one last time. The priest raised his hand. Not a wave. Something older than a wave. Cole rode south. Cutter's Bend remembered the morning of the mill in the way that small towns remember things that mark a before and after. Not dramatically, not with monuments or speeches, with the specific, quiet acknowledgement that settles into a place when something large has passed through it and left the essential things intact. Father Elias was back on his church steps the following Sunday, sweeping. The same broom, the same slow, methodical strokes, the same unhurried patience that 11 years had built into the gesture. The town watched him from doorways and from across the street and from the corners of windows. Not because he was doing anything different, because he was doing the same thing. And that sameness, the fact that a man could be taken at gunpoint on a Thursday and be back on his steps with his broom on Sunday, was its own kind of testimony about what it takes to break a town and about what it takes to keep one together. The Wednesday reading classes resumed the week after. 3 adults came who had never come before. They had heard what Father Elias was. They had seen what the town had almost lost. And they had decided, in the wordless way that people make decisions they don't fully explain even to themselves, that the thing the priest offered on Wednesday afternoons was something worth having. Nobody mentioned Cole Harlan directly in the church. Father Elias didn't preach about what happened. He didn't make it a lesson or a sermon or an example of anything. But once, on a Wednesday afternoon, when one of the adult students asked him how he had stayed calm inside the mill during those hours, Father Elias looked at the question for a moment. Then he said, "I wasn't always calm, but I decided that if the last thing I did in this life was sit quietly and not give those men the satisfaction of my fear, that was something I could choose." A pause. "And I figured that if there was any chance at all, it would come from outside, not from me. My job was to still be worth saving when it arrived." The student thought about that. "How did you know help was coming?" Father Elias smiled. "I didn't," he said. "But faith isn't knowing. It's deciding to act as though." Cole Harlan rode south from Cutter's Bend with the morning behind him and the flat Oklahoma land ahead. Shadow moved at an easy pace. The horse had run hard and deserved the rest of the day at a walk. Cole let him have it. He thought about Milo, Nebraska, about the choice he had made there 4 years ago and the calculation that had gone into it. Not wrong at the time, not based on what he knew, but wrong in the way that some choices are wrong. Not because of bad judgment, but because the future contains things that present judgment can't account for. He thought about the young man on the Harlow porch, the one who hadn't done it, who had a 3-year-old son. Cole had let him go for the same reason he had let Royce go in Milo. Not mercy exactly. Something more specific than mercy. The reading of a man and the judgment that this particular man, given a different set of circumstances, was capable of a different set of choices. He could be wrong again. He knew that. He made the call anyway. That was the job, not certainty. The best available judgment, applied consistently, knowing it would sometimes be wrong and making peace with that because the alternative, making no judgment, trusting nothing, treating everyone as the worst version of themselves, was a kind of death too. Shadow walked south. The sun had cleared the horizon fully now. The Oklahoma light in the morning has a specific quality that the light of other territories doesn't have. Wide, flat, without the drama of mountain shadow or the weight of coastal humidity. Just light, covering everything equally. Cole thought about Father Elias on his church steps. About 11 years of sweeping. About the specific patient labor of building something in people instead of in wood and stone. The kind of building that doesn't show up in property records. The kind that gets taken when the man is taken, and that comes back when the man comes back. He thought about what the priest had said. My job was to still be worth saving when it arrived. That was something worth carrying. Cole pulled the brim of his hat down against the morning light. Shadow walked on. Somewhere to the south, Rockwall was waiting. Anna was waiting. Jacob on the porch with the cedar trees moving and the stars that were always the same. Rest. For as long as rest was available. And after that, because there was always an after that. Whatever the next road had on it that he hadn't been told about yet. Because there was always something. There always was. Cole Harlan rode into Cutter's Bend to surrender. He had already won before he took a single step onto that street. Royce Callum spent 4 years studying the legend. He should have spent one of them learning that a legend isn't what a man does when everything goes right. It's what he's already done before you realize the situation. Comment below, one word. What does Cole face next? Because the road south of Cutter's Bend doesn't stay quiet for long. And Edmund Cross is still free. Subscribe. You know what happens to people who miss the next one. Tell me where you're listening from tonight. Shadow is rested. Cole is ready. See you on the next road.